Chapter 5, Daniel at the Siege of Boston, Under Siege, May 1775. After the battles at Lexington and Concord, it was rumored that militia companies were pouring into the country around Boston. Many of them could be seen from the hills and rooftops of Boston. Within a week, we heard that some 15,000 men from Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Rhode Island had formed a new army, the New England Army. They trapped the British inside the town, and us along with them. We were under siege. General Gage strengthened his fortifications on the neck. We were cut off from any contact with the country. The next days were a tangle of disorder. Dread reigned in Boston. The Patriots feared that Gage would destroy us from within. The Loyalists feared the New England Army would destroy us from without. Everyone feared starvation. With both the harbor and the neck closed, where would our necessaries of life come from? What will we do for food? How will we fill our bellies? Mother asked. British supply ships will continue to arrive for as long as the Redcoats are in Boston, Father told us. The officers will make sure they are well fed, even if the regular soldiers are not. Unless they leave the tavern, we will have the food and fuel enough to cook for them and for ourselves. What about everything else? I asked. I thought of Timothy Otis and my friends at school. Could I eat British food while they starved? Father grimaced. I hope Gage has enough sense to let people leave the town. Should we leave too, if that is the case? Mother asked. I had never thought of leaving Boston. I knew no other place. Father shook his head. There's no telling what would happen to the tavern if we left, and how will we earn a living elsewhere? And so, we stayed. I did not yet know whether to be happy or to be sad about that. I feared what the coming months would bring. General Gage ordered the citizens to surrender their firearms. Father went from Faneuil Hall and handed over a broken musket, but he kept his other one. It was no longer under the bar, but now hidden underneath a loose floorboard in my room above the kitchen. On the Sabbath, following the battle, Gage met with the town selectmen and agreed to allow the Patriots to leave the town, as long as they left their weapons and food behind. Once again, long lines formed at Faneuil Hall, where people pleaded with and bribed the officers for passes. That night, Colonel Stockdale had 6 hams, a basket of eggs, a barrel of flour, and 3 cackling chickens delivered to the tavern. The chickens were given to Sarah to care for, and she promptly named them Robin Goodfellow, Jackie Juggle, and Billy Bilk, after the characters in a fairy tale I sometimes read to her. I feared what would happen if Colonel Stockdale insisted on chicken for dinner, but at least eggs would be plentiful until then. The fleeing Patriots had made a strange parade. Sarah and I watched carriages and carts fill to overflowing, slowly make their way towards the neck. At first, Sarah clapped and waved, enjoying the show. Soon, even her bright spirit was darkened by the mood. I gripped her hand too tightly, and she pulled it away with a whimper. Soldiers ran their bayonets into feather beds, searching for hidden food and weapons. A cart was toppled in the search. I wish I could ram a bayonet into the soldiers, overturn them as if they were nothing. Instead, I helped the tired-looking woman rescue her household goods from the mud. Then I spotted a schoolmate in the crowd. "Timothy!" I yelled. "We're bound for Salem!" he shouted. "I'll see you when the Sons of Liberty have won the war!" I waved goodbye, but could say nothing. I admired his bravery. It would be grand to be able to say such a thing in front of so many redcoats. My work in the tavern prevented me. I had also seen British anger up close, and I did not have the daring to provoke it. By the end of the week, there appeared to be 2 or 3 soldiers in town for every citizen. The streets were strangely empty. Many people had left the doors open in their rush to leave. Some redcoats and even a few Boston boys freely wandered in and took what they wanted. My days were strange, too. School had been closed as soon as the war began. I busied myself at the tavern. There was work enough to do. The British built up fortifications within the town, while we heard rumors that the Patriots did the same on the outside. The New England Army set up headquarters in Cambridge. The redcoats drilled all day. By night, the officers gambled at cards and dice and made fun of the Patriot troops that surrounded them. In early May, I overheard Colonel Stockdale say that 4 more regiments of soldiers were expected from Halifax any day. Gage will have to stop crying about his lack of soldiers and drive this rabble from the countryside, Stockdale grumbled. I feared for the New England Army. Could their bravery and love of liberty stand up to such a large force of redcoats? Father had the same question. That night, I woke to discover him in my room. His candle made great monstrous shadows on the walls as he quietly lifted the floorboard and removed his musket. I followed him down the ladder into the kitchen. "What?" I started to ask, but he signaled me to be silent. The fire was banked for the night. Surely it was not time to start breakfast. Had Father decided to go hunting? Mother was at the table. Her mouth was set in a grim line, the way it was when I got playing marbles on the Sabbath. I noticed the items in front of her: a mug, canteen, knife, fork, spoon, plate, cartridge box. I slumped at the table, resting my head on one hand. Great yawns overtook my body, and I shivered. 3 o'clock. I heard the town watchman announce from Fish Street. The familiar phrase, "as all is well," did not follow. It had not followed since the war began. I struggled to blink away from the fog of sleep. Father checked the tap room to make sure it was empty and then laid a hand on my shoulder. "Daniel, I'm going to join the army," he said. "Another battle is expected any day. When England sees how serious we are, Parliament will restore our rights. I aim to do my part before it's all over." Suddenly, I was wide awake. What if Father was killed in this battle? He could even be shot for leaving town without a pass. Father did not take his eyes from me. Gradually, I guessed the meaning in them. He wanted me to go with him. The idea filled me with dread. I didn't want to leave Mother and Sarah. I didn't want to fight in a battle. I was afraid, but how could I disappoint him? "I'll get my things," I mumbled. Mother gasped, but said nothing. The determined jut of her chin and the way she eyeballed Father reminded me of one of Josiah Henshaw's staring contests. "No," he said to me gently. "I need you to stay here, to help your mother and sister, and Colonel Stockdale still has valuable information that must be passed along." But who would protect us from the redcoats if Father were not here? How could I possibly keep spying on the Colonel without Father to help me, to tell me what to do? "But how?" I sputtered. "How can you leave? How can we stay here once they find out?" "Colonel Stockdale arranged for a pass," Father said, showing me a piece of paper. "I told him that my dear mother in Connecticut is dying, and I have to go to her. If I leave now, I can reach the encampment by first light. Father's mother had died before I was born. That I knew. He'd been raised up in Connecticut, the son of a whaler. He'd become one himself. But Mother wanted a man with 2 feet on solid ground, as she said, and Father gave up whaling when he married her. That's why Prescott Tavern sign was a blue whale. Some of the Sons of Liberty took to their business elsewhere when the redcoats moved in, but we did not. We did not suffer the same insults as other. I think many of them suspected our secret work. The New England Army needs your sharp eyes and fast feet here in Boston," Father said. I didn't see how I could continue our work without him. It was the work of a man, not a boy. He seemed to read my mind. "You've been very brave," he said. "Master Richardson remains in town along with a few other patriots. Depend on him. He'll be sure to pass any valuable information along to the new army." My mind flashed back to March the 6th. Father still believed I'd acted bravely. If I told him my shameful secret now, would he change his plans? Part of me wanted to, but another part of me valued his praise too much. I'd rather be by your side, fighting," I lied, staring at the candle. "No, Daniel," he said. "Your duty is here. Honor your mother and make me proud." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, as he pulled me into a hug. In the bedroom off the kitchen, he cradled Sarah in his arms for a moment before moving her from her own small bed into the one he shared with Mother. She whimpered and then rolled over fast asleep again. He hugged Mother for a good long time before shouldering his haversack and picking up his musket. He turned to look at each of us one more time before closing the door behind him. In the breeze, the candle flickered and went out.